Thanks for joining us for this special presentation on Power Platform for Tribes. We also want to say thanks to Microsoft and Arctic IT team for teaming up to present how organizations are building data-driven applications that are revolutionizing tribal entities. Our presenters today are Dave Bailey and Sarah Jelinek of Arctic IT, and special guest Abdy, Inman, a Power Platform technology specialist for Microsoft. And with that, I will turn it over to Dave Bailey. Dave, it's all yours.
Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you're all healthy and safe and doing well and trying to get back to normal, or whatever the new normal is. One of the great opportunities we've had over the past several months is to talk about different ways that technology is shaping the new way to do business. And we thought it'd be a really good opportunity to introduce to some of you, if you haven't heard of before, the Power Apps platform, which is a software development platform where we use the term low code, no code to determine and to define how we go about building business applications on the Microsoft platform. So as you heard, we have someone else from Arctic IT, Sarah. She's going to be joining us and doing a real live demonstration on how to do some of that development work with no code or low code. And then we have Abdy from Microsoft that's going to teach us a little bit more about how to plug that all together and look at the data that we're able to generate. So what's included inside the Power Platform for Microsoft? Power Apps is a component, and we're going to focus some time on that. Building an app, integration with Dynamics 365. And then we're going to talk about something called the Agile methodology of software development, and why it still has a place despite the fact that we're using low code or no code type platforms, specifically for the IT professional as far as governance and different aspects of security around the software development initiatives that you have. Sarah's going to build an example for both an enterprise, so a casino type app, and then a government type app to show you that there's two different concentrations and the difference in how the tool can work. We'll talk about Power BI and then what it takes to get started, and then hopefully we have some time for some questions and answers for you. So changes in building applications. One of the things that everybody deals with, and even more so today, is budget constraints. Constantly in the IT space, we're tasked with, hey, do we build something on our own? Do we go to best of breed? How do we come up with a new piece of technology to address a unique business change in our environment, or whatever the case might be? Time and resource constraints. How quick do we need something to be in effect? Our leadership's telling us we need technology to address a problem. How quick can we get to market internally to our own staff? Or if we're in a for-profit or a tribal enterprise type space and we're trying to compete, how do we compete and use technology to give us that edge or get that dollar from a competitor into our property or something to that effect? Business expectations. Technology is being perceived as something more and more simple to take advantage of. And there's a little cause and effect there. Some of us have been swinging at this for a long time, right? So we've been in the technology space for a while. We can go back 25 years and say, okay, to build new software would be this expensive. And for that to resonate with us, it's like, okay, well, what do we need to have that done? Software development, we need data technology, we need hardware, we need more software, all these components. But the people that we're bringing into our employ, they are younger. They've never known a day in their life without a computer. My 12-year-old, he had software coding class from home a couple of weeks back. And my wife and I were helping him write code to build a game as part of his technology class in school. So he's going to enter the workforce and already know what it means to actually build software with his own hands and assume that if I need software to do something, I should be that quick to do it. So they're building on a platform, right? So how do we look at the platform technology and how it helps us still achieve what we're supposed to at IT and business at the same time? There is more of a need now than ever for IT and the business to actually come together. A lot of times business is out there deciding what they're doing without understanding the ramifications of the requirements it's going to put on IT. Most of us in attendance today have lived through that, right? Nobody stops down to the IT floor or up to the IT floor and says, hey, just wanted to swing in and tell you guys everything's going well. It's usually because we have a problem, we have a need, we need it fixed, or we don't understand why something's not working the way it's supposed to. Legacy system maintenance, shadow IT. Shadow IT is something that we're all dealing with. One of our departments in our business might go out there and just source some new cloud technology, software as a service. Shadow IT, they had budget, they had authority, it didn't require any assistance from IT, but they are using our information in that tool. So they were able to procure an IT software solution and have no influence from IT at all. Well, how do we steer that, or how do we influence that with the right security and everything else that we have to for compliance? Okay. So let's talk about what the Power Platform is. For those of us that have, if you've met Arctic IT over the past several years, or Microsoft, chances are you've heard us talk about something called Microsoft Dynamics. Back in the day, that was a CRM platform. It was called Dynamics CRM. And then it became Dynamics 365 CRM. And then the branding started to change, where you heard us use a term called XRM, because the CRM platform that Microsoft created ended up becoming a software development platform. We were making business applications in unique spaces where there really wasn't newer technology that could address the Office 365 stack, the Microsoft database technology, and everything else involved in that end user workspace. And then you had the cloud evolve at the same time, where web-based applications became more and more prominent. So what's happened over time is that development platform, that low code, no code capability to configure unique software to your business requirement, that became known as Power Apps. Dynamics is still a piece of software. Dynamics 365, whether it's for ERP, CRM, sales, customer service, field service, those pre-built Dynamics 365 business applications still come out from Microsoft. They still come out of the box to do what they're purpose-built for. But the platform now to build that custom and unique functionality is referred to as the Power Platform. So there are 4 main components of the Power Platform. Power BI is one that everybody basically gets for free to consume information as far as a business intelligence tool. Power BI to build analytics and that type of stuff, depending on what your business requirement is a separate product. But Power BI is that business intelligence reporting tool. Power Apps is where we actually build the applications, and you're going to see some of that today. Power Automate, just until recently, was referred to as Flow, right? So we're talking about how do we integrate or automate the exchange of data between the different applications. And it's not just in the Microsoft stack. There are Flow and Power App integrations to many, many, many thousands of other different applications, third-party competitors, you name it, to the Microsoft stack. But we talk about 3 clouds at Microsoft, and this is really good insight for you. As you know, if you leave with a few things today, this is one of them. There's the Microsoft 365 cloud. Formerly, we were calling that Office 365. It is now branded as Microsoft 365, and there are several different flavors of it. They include different iterations and capabilities in the Office 365 platform, but they're also bundled with things like Windows 10, Windows 10 updates. There's business versions and enterprise versions that offer different levels of security tools. And then there's Azure. That is the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, where we're going to take on-premise workloads and move them up into cloud workloads, whether we need a database server, a web application server, or just rack space in general, right? So that's the Microsoft Azure environment. Tremendous amount of additional functionality, everything from IoT to you name it up there inside that Azure marketplace. And then there's the Dynamics 365 space, which are the business applications, basically commercial off-the-shelf software that runs as software as a service that you build out for the different types of business you have. So those are the 3 Microsoft cloud environments. Power Apps Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agents span all three of those Microsoft clouds, as well as connect you to any other application that you have out there in your enterprise. Okay, so underneath that, there are data connectors that are pre-built. So if I have some line of business application, chances are there's a data connector already built for it. Traditionally, you would have known of that as an API. And then there's the AI builder, which means you can say in an AI suite of software built inside this tool, this is the kind of information that I need to understand about the data that I'm collecting, and actually start to model your own artificial intelligence after the data you're working through. And then one of the key elements, and this is really valuable from a tribal enterprise and a tribal government perspective, you have the common data service. And a common data service is important to understand because whether I'm talking about a tribal member or a community member, think about how many systems out there in the tribal government platform that all have that master record for that tribal member or their family. How many systems have separate databases, Excel spreadsheets, Access databases, other SQL databases that aren't connected? Things like if I change my address one place, why wouldn't my address be the same everywhere? Contact information. So a common data service, something as simple as contact information, can have a tremendous amount of value inside that platform. And then if you look at the tribal enterprise side, you have our patron, right? If we're in the hospitality space and we want to make sure we're marketing relevant information to that potential customer or existing customer, how many different systems have that same information in it? How do we consolidate that to a common data service? Okay. So you hear the term platform. Many of us have grown up with different types of technology to build for purpose-built utilities. We might have had a mobile application. We might have had an application that we built software for ourselves inside our line of business over time. And all of a sudden you want to start tying this stuff together or having it integrate with other business applications. Now everything's got two different integrations to it, and now we have a lot more to maintain. Nowadays, it's a lot more to secure. So when we think about technology architecture built to adapt and respond to an ever-evolving market, things are changing for us quicker and quicker. The need to work from home really got sprung on a lot of us. A lot of our tribal industries that we work with all throughout the US, they were not prepared to take that on-premise staff and keep them productive from an in-home workplace. Right? So pipelines feeding in and out of that integrated architecture, if we want to make sure that we have the same type of technology and integration capability throughout our IT staff to make sure that the business is nimble to respond to these changes, a platform development technology helps us do that versus several different silos. Digital innovation at scale, right? So we can react quicker to changes as they evolve in our business. And then modern IT environments become the backbone for agile business models. That word agile gets thrown around a lot. We're going to talk a little bit about it and why platform development technology versus one-offs is a better way to achieve agile. And then the use case is that the C-suite, so your leadership and IT, are on the same page because they each know what each other's capabilities are. In other words, the C-suite can feel good that they have the agility and they can be nimble enough to respond to change, and the IT department can give them that confidence because they know that they've invested in a platform that they can extend beyond what they traditionally understand. What's the industry saying about platform development? It's not just a Microsoft platform. There's lots of other stacks out there that advertise the same thing. But if you go back a few years ago, we're talking about, from 2018 to 2023, 500 million new apps will be created. That's the same number of applications built over a 40-year span in just a few years. Right? So that's how quick things have escalated. It's a true hockey stick on any curve you look at. Platforms to modernize the core is something that you'll hear. All of the MIT classes that are being offered out there right now for IT leadership, forward-thinking business, modern workplace type technologies, they are, every single one of those curriculums is telling you that you have to modernize the core and make sure the organization has everything built in one platform. Because if you don't, you're constantly having to spend more money and time and resources to enable the business to react. And there's just some future cast here as well to say the evolution of the kind of people you need in your organization. And this is really important for the TribalWise community, in that when we look at IT leadership, that C-suite, depending on the kind of IT organization you're in today, is going to evolve. You're seeing the CTO, the CIO, that chief digital officer type position where it's kind of changed a little bit. Security's crept in. There's a CISO now that might be in your equation, but security is a piece of all of those things. What better way to have everybody aligned on what security posture and capability are than to have a platform-based development, right? Platform-based development. You all at least start from that same starting point, okay? So consume the solutions for web and mobile is something that we all do right now. Mobile phone, right? I want to be able to have the same parity on my workstation, my laptop, and my phone. I want to be able to get to that. A good example of that is OneDrive. If you guys have moved to any of the Microsoft 365 stack and you're using OneDrive for Business or Teams, I can attend a Teams meeting. I can sync up on content. I can share content, work on content. I can do it the same way on my phone as I can on a laptop workstation, anywhere, anytime, any device. That's really the goal. But to build technology that is that capable and that agile across that same environment, that's a platform play, right? So you want to make sure that when you're building something for a mobile platform, that I'm using the same data source to feed all of my different interface points with my users. So Sarah's going to show you when she jumps on here, she's going to show you what it takes to build an application and deploy it on both a desktop and a mobile interface at the same time through Power Apps, okay? So when we talk about low code, no code, that means that we don't actually have to write, so we don't have to be a software programmer to develop software. And you are going to have, in the next few years, you are going to have people on your team that will need and demand the capability to be able to add functionality or integrate data from one place to another to make themselves more efficient and to be better at the job that they do or serve the community or the customer base that they're looking to serve. Those folks will come to expect access to data that they have security to and the ability to integrate it and have it deliver value. So if you don't have that platform investment, that means you have to have a lot of different expertise, multiple security approaches, and many different aspects of software development that you have to control in IT. So how do we flatten that? So Gartner right now, IDC, Forrester, all those folks are all predicting the same thing. Their percentages are a little different. Gartner's is actually the lowest. They say that 65% of all app development will be what we call low code or no code environments. So Power Apps, or the Power Platform, is by far one of the leading platforms out there as far as a software development platform. Speed and savings, reduced time and cost, and efficiency. If we're all using the same platform to build the different features and functions out throughout the enterprise, it's just a no-brainer, right? Speed and efficiency, reduced costs are going to come. So less code means more power and faster innovation. If I don't have to constantly rewrite code, if I don't have to maintain code, if I don't have to maintain that human resource that wrote the code because they're the only person that knows the code and what they wrote it for, right? If I'm using a platform-based approach, low code, no code, I protect that investment. I give myself business continuity, right? I have a common data service that I can use across all the different apps that I build. So cross-organization collaboration is really what a platform will drive. Everybody goes into a meeting about what this new business case requires for technology. They all step into it knowing that we made an investment in a platform and that we have the capability to build what we need. So it's not about how or where or when, it's about what's the best approach and how quick can we do it, because we already have those things off the table. So your decision process to take advantage of technology to solve a business requirement is significantly sped up, and I think that's really important to understand. So years ago, when we would talk about total cost of ownership or return on investment, a lot of it was speculative and we had to make a lot of assumptions. Well, we know now that because of the artificial intelligence and some of the agents that we can deploy, we know how much the technology is consumed. We know if we build a Power App and put it into a tribal enterprise or a tribal government, how many people use it? How much manual effort have we cut down on because the app is being used? So we can actually measure this stuff now. So the statistics are more accurate than they've ever been as far as how much of a return on investment did I get? All right, so that's just some interesting dialogue for you. So you hear this term called citizen developer. So the consumers of the technology, traditional IT have typically put out there, they're becoming a little bit more savvy. They understand a little bit more about how this stuff gets done. And more importantly, they know what to ask for. They can argue for tech, right? So when we look at the citizen developer, the initiative, the intuitive to use and easy to learn for citizen developers, they can make progress with this information. One admin center to rule them all for IT administrators. This is huge. So I have a user that I can set up in Active Directory and then follow on with Azure AD. I can set up the different subscriptions and capabilities. I can manage the data that they can see. I can ensure that I have data loss prevention in place. I have rights management that I can turn on across that common data service. Keep in mind, we're talking about 3 clouds. So Microsoft 365 and the Office 365 components, Dynamics 365 and Azure. One entity and authentication methodology for security, and one admin console to see how that user and what they work with traverses my IT landscape to protect what I'm supposed to protect and still enable them to be more productive. And then from a development perspective, if you have a lot of folks that learn the platform and they know what to ask for, even your development becomes more fluid. Right? So you can look at that life cycle, right? The application life cycle management capability, and you don't have to worry about iterations and versions and that type of thing. You have one place to manage all of that so that you're not constantly chasing your tail on what's compatible with what. So you're starting to see that homogeneous environment from a platform development capability. Anytime, anywhere, any device, that's a really big deal for all of us right now. It's never been more apparent to any end user in the world than it is today. So ability, agility, and flexibility to work where you need it. And it accommodates remote work. Chances are we're going to have to react the same way we have over the past few months to something in the future. We all started off in these last 2 months with every conversation began that, hey, this is unprecedented. The thing that we have to realize now as IT professionals, as we step into being able to stay productive and keep our businesses and our institutions operational, is it now has precedent. It is no longer unprecedented. The last few months have provided precedent for what happens going forward. We talked about Dynamics, Power BI, Power Automate, and Power Apps, the ability to analyze and look at the business intelligence over the data that we're generating. The integration capability used to be called Flow, now it's called Power Automate, and Power Apps, the ability to build a mobile app, a Canvas app, a model app, which we're going to talk a little bit about. And then look at all those functional areas inside that Microsoft Dynamics community. Dynamics means that's the product that's already built. Just like many tribal organizations we work with, everybody does something a little different. You might be in some different type of business that doesn't quite have software defined for it, or you're looking to get a little bit more out of it. That's where Power Apps has a huge play for you as a platform, right? So whether it's marketing, sales, supply chain management, field service, human resources, customer service, any of those areas, Those are all pre-canned Dynamics capabilities that you can build a Power App to integrate to other parts of your world. And last, before we jump into some software development with no code or low code from Sarah, I want to talk about Agile. Many of us, if we're been in the IT space for a while, we've heard Agile creep up. Plan, develop, deliver, and operate. The whole premise of Agile is that software development really never quite ends, because the way that people consume and use that technology is going to evolve over time. So if that's the case, the software has to do that as well. So you're constantly using a use story, a use case, a development effort, a test, a rollout to production, and then we're coming back around. It's a cyclical type approach. If you're really doing true software development, this is a lot of people, a lot of resources, and a lot of time and effort. The nice thing about platform technology is you have a constant throughout that. So it allows you to become even more agile. And there is something called Azure DevOps that is available to you. If you're in the Dynamics product space, there's an Azure DevOps instance that's provided to you to help keep the different solutions that you build inside that space. You also have it at your fingertips to check in. Even your low code or no code environments, you still have to make sure you adhere to best practices when you're building your own software, right? You have to make sure that you document, you define, and you have that to go back to every time a change is required. So there are some really good low-cost tools provided from Microsoft to help manage that development lifecycle. So the key takeaway here is low code and no code, you still should have a best practice software development approach. Azure DevOps is a really good tool to use that. You don't have to be some Scrum master to use it. You can use the bare minimum there to at least document and keep track of the things that you're building. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. Sarah is going to build out 2 small apps on both the government and enterprise side with some user scenarios. So Sarah, I'm going to go ahead and make you presenter.
Or can you see my screen, Dave?
Yep, we got you. And for everybody, just so you know, Sarah is, she's been with us for quite a while. She's done lots of work with our tribal customers throughout the United States. She's done a lot of work for the BIA as well. And Sarah presents for Microsoft on Power Apps and leads some of the sessions that you'll hear a little bit more about from Abdy called App in a Day. Sarah is also a certified trainer. So go ahead and take it away, Sarah.
Thank you, Dave. I get the fun part of the presentation, I think. I love how you built up the concept of using Power Apps as a development platform, and that's what I'd like to show you today. So as Dave mentioned, I've got an example that would apply for the government space as well as for the tribal enterprise space. So one of the things that Dave mentioned was using a functionality called the common data service. You're using it kind of as a way to store our data. And I'm going to show you some of that capability here. We're starting off very simple. I want to be able to create a way for me to be able to track incidents that are happening within our organization, whether it be with our facilities, with our different enterprises that we offer, within the different systems or programs that we work with. I want to be able to track that information. Many times our data tends to be a little bit siloed. So with the advantage of using Power Apps and the common data service is that I can make this information visible to my team members, to my employees that need to utilize this functionality, and I can control security through this. So I'm going to show you one example of using the common data service and using an application to be able to manage that information. What you're seeing right here is a feature called a model-driven app. And this gives me the capability to access my data, to create records, to manipulate, to edit records, to share information, to update data, all through a web client. So I'm just simply utilizing the new Chromium Edge to access my data. I can access this using Google Chrome. If I'm on an OS device, like a Mac OS device, I can access it using Safari. I'm able to access my data from almost anywhere. In this example, I can see the different incidents that I'm tracking. For example, I can see ones that have been created for an issue regarding a damaged sidewalk. This is all built utilizing low code, no code development. As a power user, as a citizen developer, I determine the types of information that we would need to collect when we're tracking these types of incidences. For example, what type is this pertaining to? Is this a safety issue? Is it a health issue? I want to be able to track a summary. I want to be able to track description information. I found an issue where we need to track these types of details, and I can easily deploy this utilizing Power Apps. So this was a model-driven app form where I can enter this information. My employees could provide the details. I can upload images, and I can save and move on to the next incident. The benefit of utilizing this model-driven app is that it's very easy to customize. This is a web client. This is a web page. But for me to be able to design this form and add functionality is very simple. I'm going to take you to our application, or basically the Maker app, where I can customize the appearance of this form. And you can see it looks a little bit similar. I can see the different types of fields that I had here. I've got some of my information provided. And what I'll see is information that I have already set up in the system, some data. I can see different fields that are created. I realize that this application is missing a priority field. So we can help expedite emergency issues or higher priority issues, or we can prioritize those that maybe don't need to be handled right away so we can take care of the important stuff. So I have a field here that I've already created called priority. I can simply click on that field and put that on my form. I can use drag and drop functionality to position this form wherever I want this, position this field wherever I want this in the form, and then I can simply save and publish my changes. A lot of the structure of how this form appears is already available to us through Power Apps. I just need to drag and drop the fields that I want to there. Once I save and publish these changes, I can then go back to my incident form that I have. I can just simply refresh my web page, and those changes will then be visible. As you can see, right below my photo field, I have the priority field that's now available. I can specify if this is low, moderate, high, urgent, or if it happens to be an emergency. So quickly, with Power Apps, I can meet a need that someone in the organization identifies as additional data that we need to have, additional functionality, and I can quickly add that and deploy that to my organization for people to use. Now, this incident tracker is a very beneficial tool for a lot of organizations, but many times when you encounter an incident, it might be out in the field, outside in a parking lot, perhaps in another facility, where you don't necessarily have access to a computer to be able to access or add information accordingly. And to save time from people having to call in and report this, I want to empower our employees to be able to enter this information on their mobile device. So another feature that we have available with Power Apps is a feature called the Canvas app. Let me show you an example of this. So in our Canvas app, we're going to have the capability to build an app that is very reactive to our computer screen. I can actually develop an app that is modeled around a certain screen size, like a tablet app or a phone app, and then be able to deploy this to my users utilizing the Power Apps app I can get in App Store or Google Play accordingly. Now I want to show you how this information that we have in this form, I want to be able to create an app that's available to my users on a mobile platform like that phone. And once you have your data set up, it's incredibly easy for you to deploy this information. Now, I've got a more polished app I'm going to show you in just a minute. But if I wanted to be able to start and get an idea of what information can I include, how would this possibly look, I want to get a starting point to see what functionality is available to me, I'm going to start the capability of creating a new app right from within the Maker experience. Now, when I choose New App, I'm going to choose Canvas. And the idea behind the Canvas app is that I'll be able to specify how am I connecting to my data, what type of layout do I want to have. There's a lot of templates that are available to you as well to kind of get a jump start on figuring out how you want your app to lay out, what type of information you want to collect, what type of functionality you can have. But for those just getting started that want to be able to create a mobile app to quickly deploy to their users to be able to access information, create records, update accordingly, I'm going to use the capability to start with my data. I'm going to use the common data service, as that's where my incidents are stored right now, and I'm going to choose the phone layout option. Now this information is going to pop up and ask me, okay, which information do you want to use? Here I've got a list of all the different tables that I have in my database, And I'm going to choose the incidents table or entity, which is what we just saw in that model app. Now, Power Apps is doing some great work for me. It's taking that information that I have with all the data that I've provided, all the fields, all that data structure, and it's coming up with an app for me to start off with. So as this information is loading, I'm going to be able to see that there's a couple of different screens provided to me right away. I'm going to choose skip on this message, and immediately you can see that information that I had in that model-driven app and that web client is now presented to me in a mobile form. I can look at the list of incidents that we currently have. I'd have the capability to create a new one. I can look at the details if I wanted to look at an example of an incident, and I can also go and create it. This app is ready to use and ready to deploy. And to give you an example, I'm going to press play so we can preview this app. So the example that I had earlier, when I'm looking at information like a damaged sidewalk or a broken window or garbage overflowing, I can click on an item, I can browse the details of that incident, and I can also edit that incident as well if I wanted to put more information with that. And when I'm done, I can click submit, and that will take me back to my incident screen, and I can navigate through this. Now, just to show you that this is connected to my live data, that I can continue to use this if I deploy this out to users, I'm going to create a new incident. All right, I can type in my information. I can provide a description. I can select an incident type, and I can set the priority on this and set an appropriate status reason. And I can submit this information, and immediately what will happen is that's now added to my list of incidents. If someone was back in the office looking at the information so they can dispatch the appropriate resource, they'll immediately see this record that I just created as part of that mobile app. So being able to get started right away, be able to quickly deploy that information to your workforce is definitely going to help cut down the time and also cut down the expense of having to develop a custom application without using a nice development platform that we have here. Now, when you work with Power Apps, one of the things that you can do is you can take this to the next level. And I want to show you some of that capability that we have with this app. I've actually taken this to the next step. I've helped design this with a user experience designer, where we've come to the capability of being able to have different screens, being able to add some additional functionality, like utilizing components on my phone, being able to take pictures, and more importantly, being able to refine the app, put our personal branding on that, making it a much more easier to use experience and more friendly user experience for our team members that are using this. So I've got capabilities here where I can create my new incident, just apply the appropriate fields to this form that I need, being able to review that list as we saw before, looking at the status, being able to see the picture of what was being reported and what's happening with that. Is it being addressed by somebody? How does that work? Now, this is actually an app that we have, and it's deployed to our devices. And I'm going to take a moment here and actually show you how this app works on my phone. So give me just 1 second here so I can share my phone screen. And I'm going to launch Power Apps. All right. Let me give that one more try. There we go. So now I'll see my incident tracker. Immediately, this is available for my end users to work with. I'm going to create a new incident on my phone. I'll provide a title. Select the appropriate incident type. This is related to health. And add a quick description so people know where that is. And now I'm actually going to utilize the capability on my phone to take a picture of that garbage. So once I have that information provided, I can then tap Submit Incident. And this will provide this record, this information that I've just created. It'll actually create a record within that common data service. Now, we can also do additional functionality for people that are looking at information. They maybe see, oh, I can see this garbage is here. Let me check before I do something to make sure that this has been addressed. And I can see that there's somebody already reported this, looks like the same garbage. I think we're good. I can just go back and create a new incident if I need to. The benefit of utilizing the Power Platform for a lot of this functionality is not only just being able to record that information, but then taking it to the next step. Perhaps this is where we need to incorporate our developers, our professional developers, where they're going to help integrate with another system, help us with some of those notifications that need to happen. Maybe a push notification to maintenance to be able to go out and address that issue right away. We can take a simple app like this and expand it to make that workflow process more automated, to provide better customer service, not only to your customers, but also to your employees and to your team. So with that, I hope you've enjoyed this demonstration. And Dave, I'm going to hand it back to you and then to Abdi to take us a bit further.
Let me know when you can see my screen again, Sarah.
I can see Power BI utilization.
Oh, very good. All right. So one of the cool things about what Sarah just showed you is, that's a concept app that was built in a very little amount of time. Started with the idea of what we needed the app to do. We go ahead, we jump into that development environment, and if you'll notice, she was in a browser, right? She's in a browser. So as an IT professional, how can I have a dev, test, and a production environment? Cool thing about Power Apps development is you can spin up a dev environment, you can shrink up into a package what you've built, drop it over into production, and give access to the people you need. The same way you go into Office 365 and add a subscription to somebody, giving access to that application is just as simple, along with the security as well. One of the cool things we started working on this past week, and this is just some good information for everybody, is we started working on a social distancing app, believe it or not. So for the casinos to be able to say that I have this many slot machines on a casino floor, and if someone's playing at this one, no one can play at the one in between the next, right? And make sure they have enough distance between those folks inside their floor. We're making a Power App that plugs into the casino management system, and when a slot machine cards out, it's not available to play on, and neither is the one next to it. And then after someone cards out, it gets flagged that it needs to be cleaned, and we're using a Power App to actually show that that slot machine next needs to be cleaned, and update the casino management system and let the slot know that it's available to play on because it's been done. That's a quick, real-time need for, I need an app to tell me and help me get this done in my casino property. Power Platform, Power App, very simple to build. All right, Abby, I'm going to go ahead and move the deck here.
Thank you very much, Dave. Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. For the next few minutes, I'll cover some aspects of Power Platform that have to do with extracting some of the data that through Sarah's example application, you might be capturing about various operations leveraging Power BI. So Power BI, for those who may not be familiar with it, is a software as a service-based platform for creating interactive reports and dashboards. It is able to get data from any number of data sources, whether they are on-premises or they're cloud-based, or in a scenario where they might be a hybrid environment where you might have some operational data stored on premises, but you might use some cloud-based services for managing citizen engagement, for example, through Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics, etc. Power BI is able to gather that data from those multiple sources, allow you to be a report author to model the data, combine or mash up the data from different sources, in order to enable report development and analytic workbook creation. There was a number of add-on capabilities, such as ability to create custom visualizations, etc. But the important point is that you'll leverage your existing infrastructure, your existing identity and user credentials that you might be using today with Microsoft 365 to log in and begin using Power BI. One other point to make before we move on is on the right-hand side, you see the various experiences for consuming reports. By and large, you use a web browser to interact with the Power BI reports and dashboards, but those reports can be accessed via mobile apps native to iOS or Android. Or you may be able to, extract some data. You may want to extract some data into Excel and further analyze it there. Or alternatively, publish your data from Excel into Power BI. So we've worked hard at making these add-ins available inside tools like Excel, integration with Visio, et cetera, so that if you are using those tools today, you'll have seamless integration with Power BI. Last but not least, you can embed these reports and dashboards inside other applications. Here's a perfect example where we've got a few reports that have been created in some dashboards by leveraging data from multiple sources, created some, analytic workbooks and dashboards, and those are being accessed via native apps on an iOS device, or alternatively, they could be embedded in a SharePoint site, perhaps as part of a Teams site if you happen to be using Teams today. Power BI reports could be natively integrated in Teams as just another tab. At the end of the day, the goal is to allow you to consume the data where it makes the most sense. If it makes sense to go to a dedicated portal with a list of reports and dashboards that you care about, great. If it makes sense to infuse some of these reports and dashboards with the applications that you've been building, for example, the application that Sarah showed, you could very easily embed a Power BI report as part of the model-driven app. Alternatively, you could embed a Power app inside a report so that if you envision a scenario where an analyst is doing some data analysis, they encounter an anomaly or an outlier, and they want to trigger a set of actions that take place from there. They can simply open up a Power app that's inside the report, perhaps in another tab, and start to enter the information that they want to either update on the source data, or alternatively start the process for someone to double check those values to ensure that those are in fact the right numbers. So those are some examples of how you can tie Power BI with the rest of the stack to create a compelling solution. One other example I wanted to briefly share with you is an example of a dashboard where on the left-hand side, you might see some key performance indicators that are keeping track of important metrics for the organization. But on the right-hand side, you're seeing some graphs and charts, in this case around Hawaii tourism, the sample application or sample example report, where we are actually using Power BI to further dig into the data and have it show us, analyze what are the key influencers for the fact that we have more visitors in the Oahu Island than we do in the other islands. And the analyzed key influencers is showing us that, yes, indeed, first-time visitors tend to visit this location the most, but subsequent visitors, those repeat guests, although they tend to come to that same location, they generally end up visiting the other locations much more frequently. So some examples of having some of the built-in AI capabilities in Power BI help with gathering insight that you may not right away be able to tell by viewing some of the graphs and charts. So those are some examples of capabilities that are built in to help enable those types of detailed analysis. Moving on over to integration of Power BI with the rest of the Power Platform stack, in this case, Power Apps, I wanted to highlight a couple of examples. One from Arctic IT, where folks in the HR team partnered with solution architects to create an application that helps track and promote wellness of the employees by incentivizing them to be a little bit more active through gamification, incentivizing folks to either sign up for a structured exercise program and track their progress, or alternatively, if they have the option of perhaps taking the stairs instead of the elevator, or have the option of maybe walking a little bit further in the parking lot, to do so through this gamification process and be able to ultimately lead a more active lifestyle. Another example is from Microsoft's HR, where we have an application. I've had this application for a better part of 15 or 17 years that I've used it to enter our time for when we take time off into the payroll system. The application itself was, it's been built, like I said, for about 15, 17 years. So it's an older design. But in my case, if I were to have a complaint about it, is that you have to be, in the office or otherwise be VPN'd into the corporate network to be able to enter your time. So one of the challenges there is if I'm, when I'm away, I always make a mental note right before I come back to on Monday morning or Sunday evening if I'm logging in to be sure to enter my time. Well, the HR team partnered with Microsoft IT and created a series of Power App applications to mobile enable the time and attendance app so that folks can simply use their mobile device and scan the amount of available time that they have to take off and be able to right then and there enter their time off. So instead of me sort of thinking about this and putting a reminder for myself in my head to do this on Monday, I can do it right then and there. And there are examples from employees that were able to just do this as there are, perhaps in the airport waiting to board an airplane, to enter their time, submit it, put their out of office, and perhaps send a meeting request to their teammates, reminding them of of them being off. So just a couple of examples of how you can quickly use Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI to mobile enable applications, legacy applications without rewriting them, and also provide some value add to the users of those applications and provide a better overall user experience. Let's take a moment and talk about how you get there. What's your, what the journey is like to start to leverage the Power Platform components. As Dave mentioned, Power Platform comes built-in with built-in integration to Microsoft 365, Microsoft Azure, and Dynamics 365. Again, the same identity that you use, perhaps if you're a user of Microsoft 365 or Azure or Dynamics today, you'll use the same identity, or users will use the same identity to launch Power Apps and launch Power Automate workflows. Everything that you will need to build an application is provided out of the box. So whether it's building a Canvas app like Sarah showed you for a mobile experience or tablet experience, whether it's using a model-driven app where you are defining the business process and then from there creating the user experiences through the various forms, etc. All the components are there out of the box. So it really is a matter of spending some time and identifying what the what the end goal is, what the requirements are, and starting to put the building blocks together in order to create an application. The Common Data Service is a core component of Power Platform. In many instances, you may simply connect to a source system and generate a report or build a Canvas app against that source system. But oftentimes, you may want to add capture some additional data that you want to store in a repository. Rather than spinning up another database instance or set up a server or use a PaaS platform in order to store that data, Common Data Service provides built-in storage and data persistence for you. And the fact that it has a common data model, most of the entities that are there in Common Data Service pertain to things such as employees, contacts, processes, etc. So chances are you'll be able to leverage some of the existing entities in Common Data Service to persist data. Alternatively, you can create custom entities to suit the application's requirements. At the end of the day, I'd like for you to think of Common Data Service as a capability that's there for you should you need to persist data and store data as part of your applications. In fact, oftentimes, we may want to have a layer of security in the application that, while it inherits from the data sources from a standpoint of what users have access to, you may want to have this additional layer where you define your own security rules. That's a great example of leveraging Common Data Service to layer that security abstraction on top of your data. As I mentioned, Power BI, Power Automate, and Power Apps come with a whole host of data connectors to various source systems. You can see over 220 data sources. So there really should not be a data source that you would not be able to integrate with. In fact, we have the capability to build a custom connector with Power Platform components so that you can wrap effectively a connector around any API that a source system might expose. But for the off chance that you're dealing with, let's say, a legacy application, Power Platform provides robotic process automation where you can do screen scraping for capturing any data that you can't programmatically access. All of this is designed with low-code, no-code framework in mind, so that business analysts, folks whose job necessarily isn't to build applications, are able to create those apps and those reports and dashboards that ultimately help them do their job better and collaborate with others more effectively. How do you get started? We briefly touched on this that Microsoft 365 does come with some level of Power App and Power Automate and Power BI capabilities. So you are able to do some automation, some forms creation over, say, SharePoint Online list, or things like approvals, workflows out of the box without having to get any other component. As well with Dynamics, you have some capabilities to do forms automation and workflow automation. The Power Platform standalone offering gives you effectively access to the whole 200 plus connectors and allow you to create all sorts of applications that may or may not interface with Microsoft 365 or Dynamics 365. It's important to note, and Sarah mentioned this, there are built-in templates. And these templates basically give you a running start for, as an example, building an approval workflow for a scenario where someone submits a purchase order and you want to have their manager or the purchase order manager, purchasing department manager approve that before an actual purchase is made. So there's a whole host of these templates that you can leverage for both Power Apps and Power Automate, as well as leveraging things like content packs and apps in Power BI to get started quickly. And as Dave mentioned, we have a series of offerings in conjunction with our partners, including Arctic IT, to deliver these one-day training events called App in a Day, Dashboard in a Day. We even have more advanced versions like Admin in a Day, etc., where members of your technical team can participate in a full day of workshop. And they typically start with maybe a 45-minute overview of the platform, but the rest of the time, the 5, 6, 7 hours are spent doing hands-on labs, building an application from scratch, a Canvas application, a model-driven application, publishing it and sharing it with others. In the case of a dashboard in a day, you'll start with using Power BI Desktop to connect to different data sources, mash up data, create reports, publish dashboards, share dashboards. The ultimate goal is the attendees of those workshops can go back with the confidence that they've done this before at least once, and they're able to sort of start to play around and start to create some reports and dashboards and apps within the organization that ultimately will deliver value. So with that said, I wanted to pause here to see if there are any questions or comments. I'm quickly looking at the chat queue. I don't see any, but wanted to invite you to ask any questions you might have.
Thanks a lot, Abdy. This is Chuck again, and I'll throw these questions out to all three of you. The first question would be, how secure is the platform? Security is obviously on the forefront of everyone's minds today. So what would you, and anybody can take this, what would you offer up to someone that's concerned about security?
Yeah, so I guess I'll take that one. One of the things that actually drove the need for the platform and the development of Power Apps was the security aspect of the information being shared. Many times as we started, years and years ago, as you heard, Abdy and I have been doing this for a while, when we started building these data sources and putting a Dynamics application over them, it was great. Now we can take the data that we see in the app and we can export it out to Excel. And then it was like, well, what if someone takes that Excel document and then shares it or copies it or does something else with it? How are we securing the data that's now readily being made available on all these front ends? So what evolved out of that was, well, we need a common data service and we need a common identity and authentication application. All right, well, now we have Azure AD, and we have a subscription model with a cloud entity. And now we have this common data service where if I can see the data here, that means I can see it in these other spaces, but the same user of that application might not be able to consume it the same way. And then you heard Abby talk about Power BI. Well, it's really powerful. It'll get at all kinds of data, but the security of that information is really important. So believe it or not, the entire Power Platform was a security first initiative. That's actually one of the biggest causes for it to come about, because unless we move to a platform capability, the data was constantly being challenged for security on all the one-offs that were established. So in and of itself, the Power Platform, Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and Flow were all assembled as a platform level development technology with low code and no code on a common data service specifically to address security.
Excellent. And one last question, and Abdi touched on this. You know, if somebody that's listening today or views this over the coming weeks online, if they want to get started, what do you recommend as the next steps?
So I would say definitely take advantage of the some of the training resources that I mentioned, like App in a Day, Dashboard in a Day, as well as a number of videos, get started guides that we have on all the components. The learning guides are comprised of, short vignettes, 3 to 5 minute videos that help you with specific tasks. So if someone wants to get started, I think those are excellent places to start, get familiarized with the platform, and then look for one of the upcoming Dashboard in a Day or App in a Day sessions to go through a structured lab where you go end to end with creating an application from scratch and then publishing and sharing with others. So those are some of the recommendations that I would have.
An add-on for that would be to, you may already have Power Apps capabilities in your subscription with Microsoft. Some of you may be invested in that platform already. If you're not quite sure how to get started, one of the call to actions that Arctic IT is offering as well is we'll give you a free 2-hour work session with our team where you bring the app idea, we'll put the resources to it, and within that 2 hours, you'll know whether or not you got a good app candidate, what it's going to take, and what a good pathway to get that application into production might be. To take advantage of those 2 hours, it'd be really helpful if you took one of those App in a Day sessions first, right? Because you can come there as an educated consumer, and we can actually make that 2 hours count for something and get you down the road to building your first Power App. Remember, at an IT level, if you're doing this behind the scenes, nobody needs to see it until you're ready to turn it out to everybody, right? So.
Okay, that's great, guys. Dave, we certainly appreciate it. I want to say thanks to you, to Abdi, to Sarah. Is there anything else that you wish to say to the audience before we wrap it up?
Hey man, step out there and take advantage of this technology. It won't be wasted time. You definitely need to learn, if you don't already have that expertise, how to become a platform level developer in your IT team inside your organization. And the Microsoft stack offers a great way to do that cost effectively, and it works with everything else you have out there. So step up to the plate, swing the bat.
Thanks again, Dave. Abdi, thank you. Sarah, thank you. Just a reminder.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
You too. Just a reminder, mark your calendars. In the month of May, next week, we've got 2 more webinars on TribalWise. And in the month of June, we're kicking off on June 9th, but we've actually got 6 webinars in the month of June. So everybody keep an eye out for your calendars and your emails. Get signed up and take a look at what we're bringing you. Everyone stay safe. Thanks a lot for joining us today. Again, thanks to Arctic IT and Microsoft. Have a great day.